I'm Rob Skinner, and this is the Rob Skinner Podcast. You ever have those moments in your life where you just wish you could forget? Those memories that even now they create kind of a cringe effect when you think about it. Those times that you just wish just had never happened, or those events in your life that remind you that only God is perfect. I sure have. I've had a ton of them. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today on this episode of the Rob Skinner Podcast. Welcome back to the Rob Skinner Podcast. My goal is to inspire you to live a no regrets life, make this life count, and multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. I'm going to start talking today about some of my faith fails, and I've got many of them. But I remember the summer of 1991, Pam and I organized a special Neighbor Day service or visitor service at our new church planting in Portland, Oregon. We were meeting at the Forestry Center there in Portland, up in the hills. Beautiful building, and it was surrounded by glass. So you met in the place. It probably held 200. And this Sunday was particularly busy because we've been working hard, just sharing our faith with lots of people. So a lot of people had come out, and everyone's really thrilled about it. But you could see there's just glass windows looking all around. So it's just gorgeous. And if you've ever been to Portland, it's incredibly green and forested. But I was preaching this lesson, and it was a hardline gospel lesson. My second point was just how messed up this world was. And I was just talking about all the sin that's in the world and how things are terrible. Right then, a guy straight down the aisle on the left stands up, and he just stands up, and he's tall. He's probably like 6'6", maybe 6'7", about 250 pounds, really imposing person. I'm just kind of staring at him as I'm talking, and he walks toward me, and he stands right in front of the podium. And I'm like, okay, this is odd, but I don't say anything. And so then out of the corner of my eye, I look over to the left, and there's an emergency door on the left, and a man pokes his head through. It's a security guard, and he points to the man, and he starts going like this. He says, "Sir, would you mind coming with me?" And just out of a 70s cop show, this guy is standing in front of me. He goes, "I ain't going nowhere, man." I'm just like going, oh no. So he's yelling at this guy over here on this side. And then I'm like, okay, at that point I stopped talking, and my sermon was over at that point. And I'm just watching this interaction between these two guys. The security guard is over at the door trying to talk this guy down. The guy in front of me is completely agitated, and all eyes are focused on this situation developing in front of the church podium. And then the security guard says, "Hey, sir, is there anything I can get for you?" And the guy goes, "Yeah, I need a cigarette." And I'm just thinking to myself, oh man, this is church. No one smokes. Right then about 6 or 7 people in the audience raised their hand. "I got cigarettes." And I thought, oh my gosh, write down their names. And he gets a cigarette. And then I hear my wife whispering. Pam's up in the front row next to our intern named Brian. And she leans over to Brian and she says, "Brian, tell him he can't smoke in here. This is a non-smoking building." I wanted to yell at her like, honey, not the time. Who cares about the smoking? Bigger issues here. And so this is going on. It seemed like 5 minutes, but maybe it was more like 2 to 3 minutes. And just the guy's not moving, sitting there smoking a cigarette in front of me. Security guards making small talk with him. And then all of a sudden, through the back of the building, you can see outside, I see 3 or 4 police cars pull up to the back of the building. And then the back doors open up, and 3 or 4 policemen come walking up the front aisle, grab this guy. He doesn't resist thankfully, handcuffs him, and takes him back out the back door. And I see the police cars drive out the back. At that point, I'm like, okay, what do I do here? So I just launch into my third point. I just kind of finish up talking about how this world is messed up. And I finish up my third point, preach the lesson. And as people are, finished, as I finish my sermon and we're having fellowship afterwards, I'm talking to people, and people are like, "Wow, that was an amazing skit you just had. That was really powerful." People thought that it was a staged event because it was like nestled right in this whole point about how messed up this world was, how sin has just captured people. And so people are like, wow, that was interesting. So, I mean, not everybody, but some people thought that I had staged the whole thing to try to illustrate my sermon. I'm like, no, that was real. And then I walked over to the guy who had brought that guest to our church and I said, hey, what was that? What happened? And he shared what happened. And what had happened is this was a man who'd been invited in downtown Portland on the parks called the Park Street Blocks, which is right in the central area. And so he'd been brought to church. He was just, had some mental health issues, I'm sure, and some other issues going on. But he'd come to church. And after the communion, he said, hey, I got to go, Paul. And so he said, I got to leave early. And so he walked outside to get the bag out of the Christian's car, and the window was down about this much. And so he reached his hand to grab his bag out of the disciple's car. And when he pulled it out, he broke the window. And so right then a security guard came along and confronted him. And this man, who's about 6'6", punches the security guard in the face. And so that's what started it. And then the man goes over to the phone bank. This is the 90s, so there's no cell phones. And he's making a call to get picked up. And another security guard confronts the guy and he punches that security guard. And so at that point, the man walks back into the church service and sits down for my sermon. And that's where the story picks up that I just talked about. So he had left earlier, gone out. And so the security guard had called the police in the meantime. And that's when he had come in and tried to call him out. But it was like so shocking and just hard to believe. The poor guy who brought him as a guest, he was just white. He was white like a sheet. And it reminds me of this scripture in 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 5, where it says, Paul tells Timothy, who's a young minister, but you keep your head in all situations, endure hardship, do the work of an evangelist, discharge all the duties of your ministry. This is actually a scripture that I try to teach any young evangelist or young leader as really my first go-to lesson, because what God was doing during that time is really training me. I mean, I was a new church leader. I was fired up, but this opened my eyes like, oh my gosh, never saw this coming. But I had to keep my head in that situation. And I mean, I didn't know what was going on. I thought, is this guy going to take hostages? Does he have a gun? Does he have a knife? I mean, anything could happen. But I just kind of just sat there and just was quiet. And luckily it got resolved. But there's so many things in life, in the ministry, in your personal outreach that are just so surprising. They hit you from places you never saw them happening. And the scripture says, keep your head in all situations. And especially if you aspire to leadership, you're going to run into situations that you never saw coming, that you weren't prepared for. But that's when you just need to stop, calm down, keep your head, endure the hardship, just keep doing the work of an evangelist and keep going. I was so happy that I kept on going with the lesson. Everything worked out great. People became Christians. It was an explosively growing church. That summer, we saw 6 baptisms in one day, one night, up on the pool at the top of my apartment complex. But you've got to keep your head. You can't freak out. You can't just lose it. You just got to keep going, even in difficult situations. And so ask yourself today, how do you do when you hit the unexpected? Are you able to keep going or do you freak out? It's really important. Keep your head in all circumstances. Thanks for listening. Here's how you can help the program. First of all, let your friends know about the podcast. Share it with them. Let them know about it. Send them a link. You can also read one of my books. And I just wrote a book called The 10X Christian. And that's a great book on just how to grow as a Christian, how to bring Jesus back 10 times what he gave you, if that's possible. Because my goal is to inspire you to make this life count, live a no regrets life, and multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. Have a great day and make this life count.